Hello and welcome to our YouTube debut of the Talktagon. I think it's about episode 9 or 10. I am one of the co-hosts. My name is Ty O'Keefe, and in a moment I'll be joined by my esteemed co-host Craig Allen of the Fight Night Picks podcast. We got a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. Some new fight announcements. We always have the Conor Khabib nonsense hanging over our head. Well, not nonsense, but news. There's just been a lot going on, a lot to talk about, a lot to iron out. So with that, I think we should probably open with whatever my esteemed co-host decides to open with, because you're a little more plugged in right now.
Man, there's so much to talk about. I mean, I'm here in the old Fight Night Pick studio in Fredericton. We got the old Ontario, New Brunswick connection going on right here tonight, and it's pretty exciting stuff with our YouTube debut.
Absolutely.
You've got UFC 228 last weekend. You've got 229, the first promo drop today. Official from the UFC. You've got UFC 230 news. There's a lot of great fights on there, and a lot of people are trying to push. I think that should be our first topic of the night. A lot of people are trying to figure out what the main event's going to be for UFC 230. I personally don't think you really need to pick a main event. I mean, you've got Jacare Souza, David Branch, Dustin Poirier, Nate Diaz, Brunson Adesanya, and I mean, if you go on the UFC's website right now, at the bottom of the card, you've got Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman. I know that's not going to be there for very long, but man, this card, it's so good already.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that they're not just automatically going with Diaz Poirier in the lead kind of surprises me, considering all the lightweight business that's being taken care of. Also, I wrote an article on the Fight Network this week about 3 fights that'll change the lightweight division. That's no secret. It's not like I came with some groundbreaking information. We got the Conor Khabib, we got Tony Ferguson, Anthony Pettis on that card, and then we have the Diaz Poirier fight, and that'll be the 3rd fight and the last fight of the year of true lightweight significance. And I understand, like you said, that's a stacked card. Weidman Rockhold will not end up on the bottom of that. I don't think the Brunson fight deserves to be main event. I just don't know why, after Diaz has had such a long layoff, just make Diaz and Poirier the main event. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Diaz Poirier makes the most sense. You know, I've said on our show, I've said on other shows, I think Tony Ferguson's definitely the best guy in the division, but at the same time, Dustin Poirier's been grinding it out. He's been getting tough wins. He can seemingly win, you know, even when he's rocked, even when he's hurt, he comes back and he gets the win. And had Dean Thomas agree with me there at one point about that. So the Thug Jitsu works. I really do think that should be the main event, but at the same time, I think it came out tonight or today that there's going to be a UFC 230 press conference. I think it's either after 229 or before 229. And that's probably going to let us know exactly what that main event's going to be, because right now it's between to be announced and to be determined.
Yeah. And by the way, the whole Thug Jitsu, I mean, we're talking Poirier is going to be practicing his Thug Jitsu against maybe the inventor of Thug Jitsu.
Yeah.
In Nate Diaz. So I'm not going to, I'm not all amped on Poirier getting through that fight like a hot knife through butter. I think he's going to have serious trouble. And I honestly think Diaz, if Diaz commits himself, right, we got to have all Nate Diaz. We can't have 80% Nate Diaz. We can't have I don't care Nate Diaz. We can't have I'm waiting for another fight Nate Diaz. We're going to have real Nate Diaz. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see that fight almost more than the Pettis-Ferguson fight.
So, I mean, I understand, you know, the significance of this fight. If Poirier wins, it's probably a road to a title shot. You know, like I said, we do have Ferguson Pettis. You had mentioned at 229. But if Poirier wins, I think he gets a title shot. But if Diaz wins, and I'm sure the UFC's crossing their fingers that Conor McGregor wins, then we get the trilogy for the belt. I mean, how cool would that be? But at the same time, Nate Diaz, he's been out for even longer than Conor McGregor. What's in it for him? I mean, if he loses, what is he? Is he still ranked in the top 15 in the lightweight division? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think he's seeing this as an avenue to the trilogy fight for the title. Like, I think that's his point. That's his motivation, is I'm going to get paid huge if I beat Dustin Poirier and Conor beats Khabib. And I do think that Nate Diaz believes Conor's going to beat Khabib, because Nate Diaz believes his win over Conor is one of the biggest wins in UFC history. If he minimizes that by saying Khabib's going to win, I think that'll kind of knock away from the significance of his win over Conor McGregor, right? Because if Conor McGregor loses a second time, all of a sudden that Nate Diaz win over McGregor isn't as big, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think that He's using it as strictly an avenue to say, look, I'm back here. But when you've been gone that long and you're a veteran like that, he does stay in shape year round. He doesn't beat on his joints. You know, he does a lot of biking and stuff like that. So he's not pounding, you know, running 5 miles a day, pounding his cartilage on concrete. So the guy's going to have cardio. He's going to be in great shape. Always puts on a hell of a fight. But I think this is strictly a ticket to Connor. That's it.
For sure. And I mean, as far as UFC 229 is concerned, a lot of people have gone online and said, hey, this card's terrible. Why would I even want to watch this card? Khabib, McGregor, Ferguson, Pettis, OSP Reyes, Lewis Volkov, Watterson, Herrig, O'Malley, Quinones, you have younger Pettis and UCA Formiga. Yeah. And then today, Tanya Evinger came out and she said, you know, as far as weight cutting is concerned and training is concerned, she's looking great. You know, she's currently unranked in the bantamweight division, dropping back down where she had her most success in Invicta, former champ, win over Yana Kunitskaya, among some of the other fighters. And they were all big name fighters in Invicta. And she's taken on a tough test in Aspen Ladd, who's ranked number 9 right now. She's 6-0. And, you know, say what you will about the bantamweight division in women's MMA, but I think Aspen Ladd's a really special talent. It was a shame she had to pull out of her last fight. But even apart from that, I mean, you know, you've got fan favorites and guys from kind of another era, and Gray Maynard taking on Nick Lentz. So there's a lot to offer with this card.
Yeah, and I think that Watterson-Herrick fight is going to be kind of a surprise in a good way. Felice Herrig is at the top of her game, period, lately. I mean, she's been fighting so much better than she looked in the Tough House, and she kind of middled after the Tough House for a while. And now I think that's big. Also, Watterson is, you know, Watterson was supposed to be an immediate contender, and she hasn't performed as such. And so I think this fight for her is really, really big. But then you think about it. What would getting a win over Herrig really do for Watterson?
Well, exactly.
Not much, except for maintain her position in the rankings.
It's kind of like
give her a ticket to the status quo.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what would a win over Courtney Casey have done for her? What will a win over Felice Herrig do for her? But I'm looking at the metrics right now as far as height and reach are concerned. And I mean, that's one of the, you know, kind of difficult things with Michelle Watterson. She's more an atom weight, right? So if you look at her compared to Herrig, according to their metrics, and I mean, like I stood next to Anthony Smith yesterday morning and they say he's what, 6'3", 6'4". I don't know. I stood next to Khabib. I don't know if he's as tall as they say he is, but Michelle Watterson, she's got 1 inch height disadvantage. She's got a 3-inch reach disadvantage and 1 inch of leg reach. So it should be a pretty close fight. They're both pretty evenly matched. I mean, geez, one's ranked 7th, one is ranked 8th. So you can't ask for much more there.
And, you know, you want to criticize this. People want to criticize this 229 card. Look at the garbage we just got in this past weekend. Okay, I personally am proud to say I did not purchase UFC 228.
You and I are in the minority on that, because I've been on. I had my show. I've been on a few other shows. You know, last night we kind of came to an agreement on Hank Smith's show, and I said I give it a C+. He said a B, which I think is fair. But I've heard a lot of people say A+. I mean, give me a break. It was
and the title fight would be the only thing that could have given it a grade like that. And the title fight was not anything spectacular.
No, I mean,
a dominant performance from Woodley. We lost our co-main event. We lost to champion in Nico Montano, and the main card was weak to begin with. It was a top-heavy card.
We lost co-main, which was a major selling point, a title fight. We lost Yair Rodriguez, which would have been fireworks, was the beat. I mean, Brandon Davis, always a game opponent, but he's coming in on a week's notice. He came out a week before on Facebook, and Nolan King reported it, that he had a bulging disc in his back. So he was really in rough shape going into the fight. And then at the same time, I mean, you and I talked about it quite a bit with the Jared Brooks fight, but the guy was coming in on like, what, 72 hours notice, maybe a little
bit. You gotta love guys like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he ended up winning the fight, but I mean, for me, I think I got back to the hotel around 10:30, 11 o'clock after NEF. I got a chance to watch the Price fight was over with Al Hassan. I got to watch a little bit of Davis, and I got to watch the end of Rivera and Dodson. And that was about it. The internet wasn't very good, so I didn't have a chance to watch the entire main card. Had to go back and find it on Sunday. And yeah, I mean, all in all, sure, there might have been finishes, what have you, but we were supposed to get a lot better of a card than we ended up getting.
Yeah, and moving forward, we got a lot of big fights on the horizon. And if people are going to give this an A, what are they going to give UFC? I mean, come on. Just to have, I don't care. If you just had Khabib, Connor, Pettis, and Ferguson at 229, and then 3 other really weak fights like they just had at this top heavy 228, it would still be 10 times better than what we just saw. Now, Darren Till, his last 2 fights, he has proven to be a very boring fighter to watch. That's straight truth. He went from Mr. King of the World, going to be champion, one of the greatest strikers in UFC history, to a very uneventful fight against Stephen Thompson. And then he landed one significant strike against a collegiate wrestler. Okay? To me, Darren Till, his ticket's been punched, and not in a good way. His ticket's been punched the other way. He either needs to move up to middleweight or whatever. But the biggest takeaway from UFC 228, I think, was the straight disappointment in Darren Till.
I mean, he's 25 years old. He's 17-1-1. I'm 24 right now, just turned 24. So maybe I could have 19 professional fights in a year, and maybe I'd be where he is, but I doubt it. So as far as Darren Till's concerned, I don't think he's peaked. I don't think he's plateaued. You look at his fight against Donald Cerrone, though, and I mean, you got to admit, that's pretty much a large middleweight or a light heavyweight fighting against a lightweight who's at the end of his career.
Yeah, and also let's remember, this was not the Donald Cerrone we know.
No, exactly. So, I mean, Darren Till definitely still has a lot left in the tank. We've seen a lot of guys moving up in weight class recently. Anthony Smith's one of those guys. Moves up, finds success. Now he's, kind of throwing himself into a title picture, really. If he can get a win in Moncton, he actually is. So,
and if nothing else, but for lack of other legitimate people besides Gustafsson. To me, as far as I'm concerned, Cormier's last heavyweight title defense has to be against Alexander Gustafsson. But we know it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It looks like Anthony Smith.
The biggest surprise and the biggest takeaway that I got from it, and I don't think I really talked about it too much, but the words that came out of his mouth at the end of, my last question, what do you see with a win? And he goes, there's 3 guys that are on the tip of my tongue. Alexander Gustafsson, if we can get the fight. John Jones, if he can come back from suspension. And Daniel Cormier, who I don't think is coming back. He said John Jones. Could you imagine wanting to fight John Jones?
No, but if you think of it from the other side, like the UFC side of it, all of a sudden Anthony Smith becomes a hell of a way to test where John Jones is at.
Yeah, I mean,
right. That'd be great UFC. So let's just say UFC says, okay, we're going to give Anthony Smith John Jones, and we can test the waters. We can see if Jones is going to fight clean without getting caught for any tests. We're going to see if he's going to have any octagon rust. We're going to see if he can be as dominant. We're going to see how his cardio is. And they all get to do that without throwing a belt up just yet. Because the one undeniable truth in this whole disaster is that John Jones is the greatest light heavyweight of all time. And his own self-destructive behavior has pushed him out of this. So I think they need to give him, they shouldn't, yes, they could justify, and anybody could justify throwing John Jones immediately into a title fight. No one would complain with that, right? I mean, that's just valid. He's earned it. But Anthony Smith would be such a great way to test the waters for both the UFC, for John Jones. Basically, the only person to be bad for would be Anthony Smith. But he seems to want it. So, hey, opportunity knocks. Let's step in the octagon.
So, I mean, I'm not going to compare these two stylistically, but I'm going to compare them, as this is the point in their career, and this could be what happens. So, Vince St. Preux, he's fighting at 229, went into that fight against John Jones, took it to 5 rounds, broke his arm. He got outstruck 105-57, got taken down quite a few times, a lot of ground passes. Then he lost to Manoa, lost to Ozdemir, and then win, loss, win, and then he has a fight coming up. I mean, maybe that's what happens to Anthony Smith, and he's able to stick around in the top 10, get some wins, make a fair amount of money. I mean, everybody's always excited to see a light heavyweight fight. So,
and as you said, if say Anthony Smith does get John Jones, let's say he wins in Moncton and gets John Jones next, okay? That would mean that Cormier would have to fight Gustafsson, wouldn't he? I mean, if he doesn't fight Jones,
comes back down, yeah.
But he's already said on social media. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but has Cormier not said he will not give Gustafsson a shot? Like he's had some beef with him on social media.
I mean, that's the fight to make. I want to see Gustafsson
Yeah,
fight DC,
and
but
just
it's so weird. I don't know.
and
I mean,
despite all Cormier's accomplishments, at this point, it's one of those situations where okay, yeah, you may be Babe Ruth, but step in and force this fight to happen. This rematch between Gustafsson and Cormier. The UFC has to, but no, they don't want to do that because he's retiring. He's been such a good guy for the sport, the UFC, and I understand that. I personally am nauseated by the Brock Lesnar fight. I don't think it should happen. So whatever. I think Cormier's doing himself a disservice if he does not fight Gustafsson at light heavyweight in his last title defense, and if he does not fight Miocic in his last heavyweight fight. Period.
and I mean,
That's the way I see it.
I saw Stipe sent out a tweet here recently, and he says he was chasing the record for most consecutive title defenses by a heavyweight, and he still wants to go out and do it, and he wants to go back, and he wants to beat the record. So it'd be great to see Stipe come back. I think he should get the rematch. If not, I mean, I don't know who you put him up against. The winner of Lewis Volkov, maybe, or Curtis Blades. I mean, they're all
the Blades fight. The winner of the Blades fight to me is the one. But you know, a year from now or less, because Cormier is hanging his gloves up for good when he turns 40 in April, Stipe Miocic is still going to be the most significant heavyweight in the division a year from now. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes him the most significant heavyweight in the division still right now. So even more than Cormier, because Cormier is going to be gone.
Maybe.
So Stipe Miocic, I fully expect him to bounce back.
Maybe the winner of Mark Hunt and Alexei Oleinik, which nobody's talking about.
Oh no, I mean I'm talking about the winner of the Curtis Blades fight.
Yeah, I mean
the Blades. Is it the Blades and Ngannou rematch?
Yeah, Blades and Ngannou rematch from China. As far early prediction, say what you want about Francis Ngannou, suspect chin, suspect. If he's afraid to take punches,
mindset.
Yeah, that's it. Say what you want about him. He still is a dangerous threat. I mean, geez, the guy knocked out Alistair Overeem, one of the craziest things I think I've ever seen in a ring. I mean, that was insane. So it's not like that power went away. He still has it. He's just kind of gun shy. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Of course, he already beat Curtis Blades, but Curtis Blades since then has been trending upwards. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. I mean, not a lot of people talking about that card.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Don't sleep on Curtis Blades. He's back in this fight with Ngannou for a reason, and it isn't just because Ngannou, went out and took a nap to his fight, and not a nap on the canvas, like an actual walking nap. And so, this Blades should not be underestimated just as he's being a place filler because Ngannou couldn't get the job done the first time. Blades deserves to be here, and he may not be as polished as Miocic or Cormier or whatever. We all know that. But man, he's got dynamite in his hands, and he's got a chin, and so let's not count out Curtis Blades at any point until someone else does it for us.
Now, just to kind of transition from that into another heavyweight topic, and I don't want to miss this because the way I have it laid out so far, if anybody's watching, they're going to tune in to Fight Night Picks. I've got 2 episodes coming out this week. I've got a Bellator audio-only episode on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm going to throw it up on all sorts of different podcatchers. It's going to be something new. And then I've got a YouTube episode coming out, and I've got 4 interviews. And I'm not going to have much of a chance to talk too much about UFC Moscow. But one of the things I noticed today that was pretty strange, nobody really focused on it too much, Andrei Arlovsky was on a Russian TV show, and they brought up highlight reels of not Andrei Arlovsky knocking people out, Andrei Arlovsky getting knocked out, and he walked off the stage. So Andrei Arlovsky's taken on Shamil Abdurakhimov, who, many might remember he beat Chase Sherman, the Vanilla Gorilla, starting to trend kind of upwards, 18-4. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how that fight goes. I mean, Abdurakhimov, if I'm not wrong, he was a champion in another league before. And he's had some success in the UFC.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where he was a champion, but you're right. And man, these ageless heavyweights, Arlovsky is just one of them. It seems like these guys, and what doesn't it seem like to you that the heavyweights would be the last group of fighters to be like this, where they're, Father Time cannot just stop these people?
I mean,
I have no idea.
Everybody says, the power is the last thing that goes. And I mean, try and compare to baseball. You think of sluggers in baseball or guys that are DHs. You think of David Ortiz. He stuck around forever because he always had power, and that's the last thing that goes. But yeah, I mean, even Abdurakhimov, he's 37 years old. So that's kind of strange. And I mean, there are a lot of fighters on this card that are kind of, I don't want to say old, but weathered. I mean, you've got Thiago Alves taking on Alexei Kunchenko, who's 18-0. You've got CB Dalloway taking on Khalid Mirza-Zaliev, like 13-2. Like there's a lot of
CB Dalloway and Thiago Alves are definitely, as you would say, weathered. I mean, these guys are they're definitely, they've been around the block, and I was kind of surprised to see that they were getting the position they're getting, because none of them have really done anything significant lately. But they're those stock guys that the UFC needs in their roster. You know what I mean? They need them to fill up fights like this, so they're stepping stones.
One more guy that's on this card, and I honestly, I mean, didn't really realize it when I was doing, going through it. But Desmond Green taking on Mairbek Taisumov. Desmond Green was involved in a really, really bad car accident a number of weeks ago now. So pretty surprised to see him in this. But yeah, I mean, it actually is a really good card. You've got a lot of Russian fighters, fighters from, all over Europe. It's a really good one. Another really good fight, Adam Yandiev taking on Jordan Johnson. That's a good one. I mean, Johnson's almost like a super prospect at this point. Him and Jordan Johnson and Dominic Reyes, those are the two guys in the light heavyweight division that I think everybody kind of wants to see succeed and move into the top 15 and up the top 15. So it's not a bad card. It's actually pretty good. I'm going to check it here because it says Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern's when it starts. And as far as Tapology goes with start times, I don't trust them as far as I can throw, I guess, my computer. I don't really trust them. But I know it is an earlier card. So if you've got nothing going on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, check it out.
Yeah, it's a shame this UFC Moscow event's just been overshadowed by everything.
And you
would go ahead.
Well, you would think they would market it better. I mean, I know ACB's gone through some problems. Like I talked to Fernando Gonzalez today, and I mean, it's going to come out on my episode, but I'll say it now live. He signed a 6-fight contract with them. Everybody thought it was an exclusive contract. It's not an exclusive contract. So there's a good chance we could see Fernando Gonzalez fighting with a different league. I'll tease it here. I won't tell you what one, but there's a good chance we see him fighting somewhere else before the end of the year, but he's still going to honor his contract with them. But they had ACB. He fought on 87 in Nottingham, England, and then 88 was from the Olympic arena in Moscow, and it was a packed house. I've talked about it since it happened. It was one of the best martial arts events I've ever seen. They come up with 1, 2, and then backdrop screens, and they put on such a good show. They had 3 title fights on there, but the whole point is it was so promoted, so many people there, so many famous people. It was such a big deal. And then the UFC, the biggest MMA company promotion in the world, and there's hardly any promotion at all for this card.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, it's their first trip to Russia. I mean, this is a market that needs to be tapped, right? I mean, by North American fight fans. And I don't know, ACB is doing some great things though to kind of stray up. And do you think, I know Frank Mir's got a lot to do with ACB these days?
Nah.
Or is that not the case anymore?
So Frank Mir, yes. I mean, he's one of their commentators. There was talks that, I know sometimes the way the Bellator contracts work too is they're not transferable, but at the same time you can fight for another promotion. We've seen, who is it? Alexander Shlemenko fight for M1. And
Emelianenko didn't he too?
Emelianenko, yeah. And then Shlemenko gets beat by Bruno Silva really badly, and who knows if we're going to see him back in Bellator. I hope so, because I love watching him fight. But yeah, so Frank Mir wanted to fight. It's kind of funny because one of the guests that I had on really early on in the podcast was Tanner Bozer, the bulldozer from out in Alberta, and he was kind of hoping and calling for a Mir fight because ACB actually does have a really good heavyweight division. I mean, Daniel Olanchuk, he just fought last weekend, so there's a lot of good guys there. There's a lot of top talent, and it'd be interesting to see if Frank Mir fights for them. I mean, after losing in the first round of the heavyweight Grand Prix with Bellator.
It seems that Frank Mir sees himself as a commentator slash kind of steward for that promotion, if that's, and I think he sees himself more in a front office capacity, if to take a term from baseball or basketball, football, than he does actually fighting for him. And I think he sees this as the next step in his career immediately when he retires. I do not think we'll see him in the cage for ACB.
I really, really like the way that he speaks. I listen to his phone booth podcast quite a bit, and it's always a treat. I know when I think it was the card that he was on, Chael Sonnen were on in Chicago. I know they held a live show at one of the, I can't remember if it was Comedy Store or what it was, Laugh Factory in Chicago.
I think it was a Comedy Store. I think, but yeah, go ahead.
There was him, Chael Sonnen, among others, and they kind of hosted like a live show there, which is pretty cool. He's a really good speaker. He's a really, really technical commentator, which is something that I really like. I mean, I'm sure that's one of the things that I try and do, with every episode. I hope somebody takes something away and they're able to learn something. I mean, geez, I throw out stats like everywhere, and I hope somebody's able to, retain some of that knowledge, because it sticks right up there. But as far as Frank Mir is concerned, that's kind of what he does when you watch the broadcast, and he walks you through a submission or a takedown, and he does it so well, and it's so technical, and he's a great expert that, he's really something special for ACB, and it's almost a shame that he's not with Bellator. I mean, Bellator's got something great going on right now, and I know Joe Rogan actually came out. There was a story on MMA Junkie today about it, and I think it was from the Joe Rogan Experience when he had TJ Dillashaw on. But he was saying that I hope Bellator, rivals the UFC, because we saw today Bellator Hawaii announced for December, which is super exciting. But they've got such a good commentary crew. Say what you will about the over-the-top annex from Mauro Ranallo, but I think he's something special. I love him so much. He's so much fun. Mike Goldberg, Big John's kind of stepping in and doing his thing. They've got Jay Glazer, they've got Chael Sonnen, and Jen Brown does a good job from the locker rooms and around the cage. It's such a good production, and I think Frank Mir would be a great addition to it.
Yeah, and you're right. Bellator does have, their team of analysts and commentators are, you could say, even possibly better than the UFC's at times. Chael Sonnen is irreplaceable. I really believe that. But if they could kind of match that energy, it seems often that the biggest show is in the commentary booth of Bellator sometimes. But to get back to this Bellator Hawaii deal, I wrote an article for Fansided today about that. And, to have Lee McFarland be able to go home after that title defense against Alejandro Lara, to go home and fight like that. Also, it's worth noting that the UFC was trying to have an event in Hawaii for a while, and the tourism board was stopping them for whatever the reason. There was issues, and I know that.
Did you see what the numbers were?
No, I don't, but I know the tourism board also stepped in and it was getting in Bellator's way for a while too.
So in the UFC's case, the UFC wanted $6 million from the tourism board to promote the event there. And Bellator, where they're holding this event in Hawaii, I think seating capacity is 8,800. Do you really need $6 million from a tourism board to promote an 8,800 seat arena? I'm pretty sure in Moncton, New Brunswick, where it's 85 to 8,800, I know that's what the seating capacity is at the brand new rink, which just opened tonight. Keith Urban's in town. But I know they wouldn't ask for that from the government of New Brunswick.
Hold on. Isn't Keith Urban married to Nicole Kidman?
Yes, he is.
So she could maybe be in Moncton tonight.
Possibly.
Maybe probably. I'm just saying, you might want to get in your car when we're done this and go get a selfie or an autograph or something. That's Nicole Kidman. Who cares about Keith Urban? Nicole Kidman.
Quite possibly.
I'm just saying.
As far as Hawaii is concerned, they said that their entire tourism budget is $5.8 million. The UFC wanted $6 million to promote this. They said, we'll give you $1 million, and that's more than enough. And Dana White kind of balked on it, and he talked with one of the reporters in Hawaii, and I'm pretty sure, I can't exactly remember his name. I should have written it down. But
it was from KHOH or something. It was from one of their local outlets.
Exactly. And I know I've seen his name before. He actually does report on MMA quite often. But it's a shame that the UFC couldn't get over there quicker.
And let's not forget, they have added the Lyoto Machida Rafael Carvello fight to that card now too on December 15th.
And
so we're not just going to see Lee McFarland, we're going to see Machida.
I think The plan with Lyoto Machida when he signed over with Bellator, and Scott Coker came out and said it. Lyoto Machida said, I'm going to fight at middleweight, light heavyweight. I want to fight heavyweight. I want to fight Fedor. And Scott Coker kind of said, yeah, sure, whatever. We'll see what happens. So Lyoto Machida taking on Rafael Carvalho, who was the former middleweight champ. What's his record? 18-1 or 18-2 now?
Yeah.
Since losing to Gegard. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that fight. I think that the winner of Rafael Lovato Jr. and John Salter, I think one of those guys is going to get a chance at the belt, just because that fight's next Friday. The week after that, you have Rory fighting Gegard for the belt. That kind of sets it up. And John Salter's on a 7-fight win streak. Lovato Jr. is 9-0 or 8-0, I guess. He'd be 9-0 if he gets the win. So I think one of those guys is in line, but I mean, Carvalho Machida, that's a really interesting matchup.
Oh, it absolutely is. And for anybody who doesn't know Carvalho too well, this is an opportunity to see. This guy is one of the most underrated middleweights on earth, as far as I'm concerned. He's been overshadowed by, he lost his belt to Gegard Mousasi, and now McDonald coming into the middleweight division, at least temporarily, has once again kind of overshadowed what Carvalho has done. But he is make no mistake, a top 5 type guy. I'm not saying he's top 5 in the world. I'm just saying he is a top 5 caliber cat. Like, this guy can scrap. And I'll tell you another thing. Lyoto Machida, at his age, will not make the cut to 185. He will not fight. He can say it all he wants. I do, however, think we will see him fight as a heavyweight. And I'm telling you, I would love nothing more than for the semifinals of this heavyweight Grand Prix for someone to drop out and to get Machida somehow, if that works, Carvalho. It won't work because the timing in December. But in a perfect world, I would love Machida in that heavyweight Grand Prix.
It's tough. There's a lot of moving pieces in Bellator's heavyweight division. I think one of the guys that everybody forgets about, and I think he's almost like semi-retired, is Big Pygmy, Justin Wren. Where's Justin Wren been? I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is, Justin, you're right. Justin Wren he's a legit heavyweight, but it's their best division. And they've brought in Roy Nelson and Matt Mitrione and all these guys like that. A guy like Justin Wren suddenly loses a lot of significance.
The guy, he's a big humanitarian. That's the Big Pygmy nickname, and that's what he devotes a lot of his time to. So that's why we haven't seen him. But Czech Congo was supposed to be the original alternate for the tournament, and then he ended up fighting Javi Ayala and finally got a finish. So his win streak's rolling. He's going to be fighting Tim Johnson coming up here. It's either Bellator, it's either 207 or 208. And the reason why I can't remember which it is because one's on a Friday and one's on a Saturday, and one's from Uncasville, Connecticut, and then the next one's from Long Island. So they kind of all blur together. But yeah, we're going to get that fight. So possibly one of those two guys could slot in. I know Roy Nelson, people say, oh, maybe he'll get another chance, but he was already involved and he already lost to Matt Mitrione.
Yeah. Roy Nelson, I don't think that, and they have a beef with each other, Mitrione and Nelson, but I don't think that's a viable fight.
It's funny because at Bellator 200, that was the alternate fight. It was supposed to be Mirko Krokop and Roy Nelson, and there's your alternate. But, Mirko with 5 separate knee injuries to the same knee, 5 separate ligaments and different things. But now he's going to be fighting in Ryzen, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and you're right. Bellator's not only to the heavyweight division, but the whole tournament and everything. There's so many moving parts to Bellator's heavyweight division. But make no mistake, it is their best division, and it seems like with all these ageless heavyweights, it's going to continue to be their best division for the next few years minimum. They need homegrown talent beyond Michael Chandler and other people, and they need a female homegrown star. Now, Alima McFarlane is on that path. Heather Hardy, unfortunately, some things happened. I think they wanted her to be a superstar really badly. So these Grand Prix and these tournaments, to me, are a great way for Bellator to separate themselves from the UFC and from other people until they do get some of these homegrown stars, up and coming. But, man, we need them badly in Bellator. We really do.
I mean, it's tough. You say a female up-and-coming star in Bellator. Like, you do have, like you said, Alima McFarlane. There's some others. I know in her last fight, Talita Suarez, they had to bring her in, or Talita Nogueira, that was who it was.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of Tabitha. I'm thinking of Suarez from last weekend.
They had to sign Nogueira in to get her to fight, and then she fought for the belt. She lost. I guess Talita Nogueira, no, that was Julia Budd. But in McFarland's case, you know, she's fought some decent talent. I guess you could kind of point to Emily Ducote, who's kind of on a rough patch, but she actually has fought quite a bit of UFC caliber talent. So I think with the new flyweight division in the UFC, we're going to see an awkward stage here really, really soon, if we haven't already, where you've got bantamweights dropping down like Shevchenko, you've got strawweights moving up, which hopefully Joanna does.
But let's be clear. Shevchenko is not a natural bantamweight. She's
no,
a
exactly.
flyweight.
No, exactly. And then you've got, you know, probably from, I want to say like 5 to 15, you've got all these different fighters that on any given day, they could kind of move their way. It's pretty fluid. So I could see some fighters getting disappointed with where they are in the rankings. Bellator comes in with a sweetheart deal. I mean, I said it on my show on Sunday right after UFC 228. And, you know, your colleague Nicole Bosco didn't agree with me, but if Nico Montano certainly has a gripe with the UFC and she found out on Instagram that she was stripped of her belt, if she's really, really mad, man, Bellator's flyweight division would be perfect for her.
Yeah, that's a very good call. And obviously the UFC isn't pleased with Montano because they stripped her belt like that. They just don't do that when someone misses weight. And it gives kind of credence or kind of gives validation to some of the stuff Shevchenko was saying about she's had to prepare for Montano 3 times now. And people were saying, hinting or insinuating that Montano was milking her injury time, maybe possibly to avoid Shevchenko. And, you know, Shevchenko, she's inevitable. It's inevitable that she will be the champion of that division as far as I'm concerned. And the UFC is doing everything they can to get that belt in her hands. I think they would have given it to her in a Khabib type of Ally Kinta Khabib situation if they could have found somebody to play the Ally Kinta role this past weekend. They just couldn't. But yeah, Montano, that's a very good point. Montano would be great for that division. And you imagine Montano comes over and fights McFarlane?
Yeah,
or, I mean, that'd be great.
We've seen Bellator with the signing of the UK and Ireland, and for that point, European-based fighters. And off of this past season, season 28 of The Ultimate Fighter, they signed Richie Smullen, who lost to Luis Pena. So he's going to be competing in Bellator. They seem to have a keen eye on talent, guys that maybe they won on the Contender Series and didn't get a contract. Maybe they fought in The Ultimate Fighter, but hey, things didn't go their way in the end. These guys are still really good fighters. Jay Cuccinello is another one of those guys that, man, like, why Bellator? Go ahead and sign him. He had success in EFC. Maybe he could find success in Bellator. I mean, people have to stop looking at this promotion like they're some lesser league, some second fiddle. When you've got Rory McDonald, Gegard Mousasi, Fedor at his age, I guess, but Michael Chandler, there's a lot of really good fighters here that could easily slot into a top 10 spot in the UFC and find success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. At Bellator in the last, I don't know however much years or whatever, last 2-3 years, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
They have definitely come out on top in terms of, they're not like a 2 or 3 tier kind of organization. They're definitely, UFC is 1A. And if Bellator is not 1B, it's 1C. And there's nobody who's threatening Bellator's position in that role right now.
And one of the things that a lot of people were commenting on, and I dropped a couple of pictures, I dropped a couple of tweets today. People said, oh, great, there's a UFC Hawaii card. I'm on the East Coast. How am I going to watch it? Or Bellator's planning a card in Israel. I don't want to watch that on tape delay. And I said, Bellator 201 was when Ilima-Lei Macfarlane most recently defended her belt, and you wrote an article about it, so it's good to talk about it. But Bellator 200, the ratings were actually lower for Bellator 200 than they were for Bellator 201, which was a surprise to most people, even when I bring it up now, because it was on tape delay and 201 wasn't. So,
and they didn't promote Bellator 200 like the UFC promoted UFC 200.
Exactly.
It wasn't this big monumental event like we expected.
Over in the UK, I think it was. I mean, you had stars there. You had Chris Pratt. Like they bring out Hoist Gracie among other different, stars and celebrities. And it was marketed well there, especially with Aaron Chalmers. I mean, let's just show the whole cast of the Geordie Shore. Everybody knows who they are already. It's free advertising. So it went well over there. Then they sign a whole host of fighters. There's a chance that there's almost going to be like an Ultimate Fighter type competition or show over there. I mean, it's so perfect. It's so fun to watch. Like, it's so exciting for me. But as far as we move on with this DAZN deal, which, you know, a lot of people are quick to pump the brakes and say, hold on, it's not going to be that great. It's going to be that great simply because we're not going to have to worry about tape delay. If you go and look at the brand new poster that came out for Bellator Hawaii, at the bottom it says live on DAZN, and it's not live on the Paramount Network at 9 p.m. where they fib about it. It's legit. You're going to be able to stream it in real time and watch it. You're not going to have to block out Twitter like I have to when Bellator
and deal with all those Paramount commercials, Spike TV type commercials that repeat themselves over and over. Oh my God, the same four shows. It drives me crazy, and it's honestly made me turn off Bellator fights before.
And you just got to hit mute on the TV and kind of block it out for a little bit. That's when you take a break.
You see, you're a far more tolerant young man than I am.
I do like bar rescue though, yeah.
Yeah, I bet you do. I can see you getting in a bar rescue. I like to spend my time avoiding shows like that. Oh, bar rescue. But that's fair. No, it's a definite. There's nothing bad about the DAZN deal, because anytime you're giving fans fights in real time, you're increasing your distribution, you're increasing your mass audience, you're making it more accessible. There's nothing bad about that.
And there were a lot of people out there, and I was quick on Twitter again. I was trying to defend it with Joe Rogan saying, you know, I really hope Bellator rivals the UFC. I'm not one of those wrestling guys, pro wrestling guys, but when I was a kid, I was a huge pro wrestling fan, and I used to watch all the old DVDs. And so I wasn't into it in the late 90s, early 2000s. But from what I've gathered, that was the best time in pro wrestling. You had WWF versus WCW. It was the Monday Night Wars, and it drove ratings super high. You had the best talent competing on two different platforms, and eventually WCW kind of failed, faded. WWF got the talent. I mean, the UFC is not going to fail. Whether they're worth $4 billion or $7 billion, they're definitely far and away a lot better.
Nobody will ever replace. It'd be like replacing the NFL.
Exactly. But for Bellator to come, you know, so far, whether it's since, you know, Scott Coker's come in or in the past year or two, whatever it is, I mean, it's something special. It's so cool to watch, to see this promotion just kind of rise up. And people throw shade and say, oh, well, you know, it's washed up Fedor, or, you know, Lyoto Machida's best days are behind him. Yeah, but you're still going to want to watch it. I mean, Vanderlei and Rampage Jackson 4 is coming up at the end of September, and, you know, say whatever you want about it, but I'm going to be tuning into that fight. It's not going to be.
Are you more interested in that fight, though, than the third Tito Liddell?
Yeah, actually I am.
Me too.
100%.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
But I think the funniest part about the whole Chuck Tito poster was one of the comments that said they look like they got caught in a closet making out, because it's a funny picture. It's kind of an awkward one, but Golden Boy, I'm excited to see what could happen. I've got possibly a little bit of news, or, you know, a little bit of a revelation about the card coming up later on this week, but it could be interesting.
Well, and Bellator is going to keep doing what it needs to do to put butts in the seats, but this Golden Boy stuff, you never know. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya is talking presidential bid now. This guy's got big designs, and
as far as MMA, Luke Thomas actually. I listened to his show today on Sirius XM, a couple of bits of it, so it's kind of mixed up. But I listened to closer to the start, and he was talking about politics and sports. And I mean, you know me, I don't really like to talk about politics all that much on air, but as far as politics and sports, man, keep them separated. There's no need to have them together. It's just, it's unnecessary.
And Colby Covington went on Luke Thomas's show, I believe it was yesterday, his Sirius show, I heard, and was completely not hiding the fact that he's making this fight with Tyron Woodley about politics. Me and my MAGA side, the Trump side, against his, I think his exact quote was, his Black Lives Matter bullshit side or whatever. That's, you know, whatever. You want to act like that, fine. But you're going to build enemies. And bringing politics into this is just, it's irrelevant. Let's not, it's got nothing to do with what's happening in the octagon.
There's no place for, there's no place for politics in sports whatsoever. There's no place for racism whatsoever. I mean, in general, there's no place for it, but especially in sports. I mean, MMA is probably the, like you and I have said it before, it's probably the most inclusive sport in the world. I mean, anybody can fight anybody. Even if there's a language barrier, people end up. You look at a fight between, geez, I don't know, a Canadian and a Chilean. They might not speak the same language, but at the end of it, both of those guys or gals are holding each other's hands high. They're hugging. They're talking it out.
And there's,
I mean,
and there's,
it's so
it's
special.
also, let's be honest, it's also very accepting and rightfully so about people's sexual orientation. It doesn't hide, like for one of its greatest champions, Amanda Nunes has just gotten engaged, and that was celebrated, and rightfully so. People let them do what they want. This is their personal lives, and anytime this is brought into it, when I hear Colby Covington say what he says about Brazilian, Colby Covington is a racist. That's just the way it is, and I don't care if that makes people angry at me for saying that, because it's a fact. And we don't, there's always going to be some of this, but Colby Covington said something yesterday to the effect that his beef with Woodley is the biggest beef in the history of MMA or something like that. And it's like, how could you say that with Conor McGregor and Khabib hanging right over your head after all that happened? That's a serious beef. They announced that Khabib and Conor are going to be doing a New York City press conference in the next week or two.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have 40 people in between these two guys. Period. They are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And as far as Tyron Woodley's concerned, and people saying whether or not the UFC want to push him, one of the weird conversations that's come out since Tyron Woodley defended his belt is this whole conversation of greatest welterweight of all time. Where's Tyron Woodley rank? And a lot of people are saying he doesn't rank in my top 3. He doesn't rank in my top 5. I don't even have him in my top 10. Look in the mirror. You're kidding yourself. Tyron Woodley is the second best welterweight of all time.
Oh, yeah, look at his resume, and it's undeniable.
I mean, you beat Robbie Lawler for the title, you finish him. You beat Prime Carlos Condit, the knockout over Josh Koscheck, the title defenses. I mean, Damian Maia's no joke. Stephen Thompson's no joke if you go in there too quick. I mean, world-class karate. Darren Till, say what you will about the hype train. He's a big kid, and he was a tough fight. There's no easy fights for Tyron Woodley.
And he took the belt for Robbie Lawler, a very game Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, and a lot of people, some people, I've heard only a very few who've said I rank Woodley over GSP. I mean, I have GSP as my number 1. It's not a whole homer thing, a Canadian thing. I mean, you look at the body of work, plus the fact that he took all the time off. Say what you will about Michael Bisping, but he came back and he gave it to him and he won the belt, and that was special. And so Tyron Woodley number 2, and then Matt Hughes number 3.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. And anybody, I guess people who've been following MMA a long time like you and I have, that's, there's no other answer to that question. George St. Pierre, I'm never been a fan of his, but he is number 1, undeniably the greatest welterweight we've ever seen. Tyron Woodley's resume dictates and is all the proof you need to say that he is the second best. Matt Hughes, is 3, and after that it gets very murky.
And let's not push Tyron Woodley. Oh, he doesn't need it. He doesn't need the promotion. He's a boring fighter. He's a family man. He's from Ferguson, which was, the city that was plagued by riots not that long ago. What was that, last year, a couple years ago?
Oh, yeah. Coming from that and becoming a champion is a huge point of pride for him, I know.
Yeah, and he's a wonderful role model. He speaks really well. He's on TMZ. He's kind of creeping up and just making more and more appearances on FS1. Like, the guy's a stud, and for people not to appreciate him and celebrate him, it's a shame.
It is. But I think we're going to see a little bit more of people getting behind. I really see more people getting behind Tyron Woodley in the future. I really do. No matter what he's doing, I think there's clearly a problem between him and Dana White. The fact that Dana White skipped that press conference when a champion defends like that. That's a slap in the face. And as Luke Thomas said, if it was something like a personal emergency or a family something that Dana White had to go out and take care of, then so be it. But if not, what a missed opportunity for Dana White to throw his support behind Woodley, because Dana White has criticized Tyron Woodley so much in the past, way more than whatever. And I'm sure you remember last year when Conor McGregor was not even fighting in the UFC and he was doing the whole Mayweather nonsense, Dana White wore a different Conor McGregor t-shirt every day for about 9 months. And, you mentioned getting that support behind Woodley.
I still hope that Zuffa boxing happens. You know, since I've kind of shifted fight night picks, I've gotten a little bit more out of the boxing game. I'm going to be watching, you know, Triple G Canelo 2. I think that's obviously it's going to be a great event. But yeah, I mean, there was talk they were going to sign Mikey Garcia for a whack of money, who, you know, really special prospect there. I think he ended up, or he will sign with Matchroom Boxing with Eddie Hearn because the money's there, especially with their huge DAZN deal. But yeah, Zuffa Boxing's an interesting one. You know, whether we see UFC fighters fighting in it, possibly kind of similar to like a Bellator kickboxing. I know Heather Hardy's thrown her hat in the ring and she said she wants to fight in Bellator kickboxing. So there's a lot of different things that the UFC could do. But going forward, yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting spot. Bellator growing on an international stage, the UFC hosting more US and North American cards, buying M1, the rise and fall and rise again of ECB.
Oh, yeah.
There's never a dull moment in the sport. There's no off season. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. We were saying that this morning. You know, guys like us who grew up watching seasonal sports like baseball, basketball, football, and unfortunately you hockey. But you know, it was so depressing coming off of that, the season to be over, and you're like, oh my God, I can't even deal with how long it's going to be before it starts up again. Especially if you played those sports as a kid. And for MMA, man, I wish I would have been born like maybe 10 years later or something, because this MMA for the people coming up now, getting this constant stream of entertainment and news and controversy. And, you know, it's just, if you're an MMA fan, you really have it good. Especially I mean, the how far the UFC has come in the last 10 years and who it's brought with it in terms of competition. Yeah. Anyways, this has been our Talktagon YouTube debut. I know we're going to have tons more content on YouTube in the future. Before we wrap up this episode, obviously, I want to talk to you about what you've been up to. You had a ton of stuff going on this week. I know Anthony Smith for the Moncton events and Bellator stuff. Talk about that and where we can find your content.
I had NEF 35 last weekend, posted live results and some pictures from Bangor, Maine. That was a lot of fun. They've got NEF 36 coming up. I believe it's November 17th. They're back at Aura Nightclub in Portland, Maine, which is a really cool. They've got basically a balcony, and then they have a pit underneath, and the cage goes on the stage. And it's a really cool spot. So fans in the Maine, you know, New England, or even in the Maritimes that are watching this, go down. It's so much fun to watch some of those smaller shows. They put on a really good one. So look forward to that. As far as this week, like I said, Bellator 205 preview show coming out later on this week. I'm going to talk to some of the fighters. I've already spoken with Rafael Lovato Jr. and AJ McKee, who's your main event, taking on John Teixeira, or his nickname Macapa. So that's an interesting one there. I've also got a Fight Night Picks show that's going to be on YouTube. I already done a couple of interviews for that. Like I said, Fernando Gonzalez is going to be on there, and a bit of news or maybe some insight into where we could see him fighting next, because it could either be ACB or another promotion, and it's pretty exciting who that other promotion could be.
On social media, where can we find you?
You can find me at Craig Allen FNP on Twitter. Just joined Instagram. Found some success with it. I'm not big on the pictures, but it's kind of fun to play around with. You can find Fight Night Picks on Facebook as well, at Fight Night Picks on Twitter, and always the website fightnightpicks.net, where you can find that article regarding Anthony Smith and you know, some of the questions I threw at him yesterday. But at the same time, I mean, he's had quite a run. He lost to Thiago Santos in the spring. You know, knockout loss. Where do you kind of go from there? Well, he moves up in weight class, beats two guys who are legends. I mean, Rashad Evans and Shogun, who are two pioneers of the sport, and now he's faced with a really tough challenge in Volkan Oezdemir.
Absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's definitely. I hope that the fight gets the attention it deserves, and I know the Canadian fans are in for a treat, and especially the fans in Moncton. So if you get a chance to get a ticket to that, or any of the pre-fight events that might be going on in Moncton, any of you fans out there, seriously check it out. It's going to be better than expected, and one hell of a main event. I should have an article about Conor McGregor coming out this week on Fansided MMA. I've got content on the Fight Network, and I'll have a new article about Tyron Woodley probably coming out this week on the Fight Network. Wrote about the Bellator Hawaii thing today. You can find me on Twitter at Above the Fold Ty. We just started this YouTube stuff, so check me out at Ty O'Keefe on YouTube, my YouTube channel, which we're uploading some of our old content, audio only stuff. But from now on, we're going to be video, I think, all the time. And we're real excited about it, and very, very happy to be here. I can't remember what episode of the Talktagon this is, so I will just say it is our YouTube debut. I'd like to thank my esteemed co-host, Mr. Craig Allen of the Fight Night Picks podcast. Thank you so much for not only your patience, but helping, bring me through all this and get me to this point and get us to this point.
Thank you, sir. It's exciting.
Yeah, man, I couldn't have done it without you. You should have, you've been trying to drag me this way for months. Guess I should have listened. But anyways, that has been our Talktagon YouTube debut. Stay tuned. We're going to have tons of content coming out. I'm assuming we'll have another episode this week at some point.
Most likely,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and we will continue to just put out tons of content and check us out on social media. Thank you so much, Craig, and thank you for your time. This has been the Talktagon.